Hello guys, I hope you're all well. So welcome to the third lecture of the course Introduction to Urbanism. I apologize today because the weather is a bit windy, but I hope the audio will be okay. Okay, so today we're going to talk about two interventions that they are interesting to study together because they are they have a lot of different factors that we can compare. So today I'm gonna start talking about the plan of Cerdá for Barcelona, and then we are gonna talk about Paris. They are completely different plans. So it's interesting if you have time, to study about the two of them in more detail. So, all right, let's start. These are recent photos of Barcelona. I don't know if you've ever seen any picture of the city. So, first, these pictures are only for admiration. So, you can see the quantity of green there is in the city, and you can first of all admire and wonder how was everything planned and organized. So this is just for you to wonder a little bit. Now talking a little bit about history. In the beginning, the Roman Barcelona was a small city. However, its location was strategic because the city was in a plain territory surrounded by and protected by several hills. And the city had direct access to the sea, which facilitated maritime trade. Additionally, Barcelona had two rivers that helped connecting the city and inland Spain. So at the beginning of the 19th century, Barcelona still had the urban fabric of a medieval city. Here in the middle, it's a photo of the medieval and old part of the city. So what are the characteristics of a medieval city? The city was walled, highly densified, with poor hygiene conditions and a large population in extreme poverty. Consequently, frequent social and political conflicts. Just to remember that, in the past, it was common to build walls with defensive and military purposes. So, in addition to ensuring the control of urban growth, facilitating the administration of the territory, and the collection of taxes. However, over time, it was necessary to expand the cities. So they opted for the demolition of the walls. And at that time, the city was experiencing accelerated economic growth due to port activities and the textile industry, consequence of the Industrial Revolution, while at the same time, overcrowding, epidemics, and unsanitary conditions were collapsing. So the urgency of transforming the city became the urban plan created by the engineer and urban planner Ildefonso Cerdá. So Cerdá was the urban planner responsible for the plan of Barcelona. First, the collapse of medieval walls of the city of Barcelona in 1854. So they increased the total area of the city, allowing its expansion beyond the limits of the old wall. Just pay attention that different from Haussmann in Paris, he didn't demolish the old fabric, or he didn't change the old city. He maintained the old city and he added. So his plan was an addition to the old city, which was different from Haussmann, because you will see that the plan of Haussmann was to demolish old parts of the city. So the base of the plan is a system of geometrically ordered roads and blocks. So it was possible to have infinite extent as the city grew. He created a grid which was possible for the city to continue to grow, to continue to expand. And the street was the basis of infrastructure and transport networks, promoting better aeration and lighting. Basically, his ideas were based in a humanist urbanism. He established a grid structure and created a system for collecting water. So talking more about the characteristics, the corners of the blocks, are beveled at the intersections, allowing for better visibility and the creation of small squares with commerce and leisure. It distributes parks, industry, commerce, and residences in a balanced way. The main avenues form structures that coordinate the expansion of the blocks. The street must provide infrastructure networks, allow transport and better aeration and lighting of houses. The transport system is a fundamental element for the functioning of the city. So this is a photo of the grid of the plan. You can see he divided these lines. He thought about dividing the city to connect it all through these avenues. And down here, actually here, you can see the medieval and the old city and the addition of the grid. Another important thing that I want to cite here is that the buildings had commerce on the ground floor. Workers, they would live in the upper floor. This distribution structure was common in the 19th century, as the ground floor was the most valued. Just keep in mind that elevators were not common back then, right? So this is another photo of the plan of the city. Note how those two diagonals, they help to connect the whole city. And also here it is the old city. This is an actual photo where I want to show you here the old city. I'm always trying to call your attention for that. And these are the details of the design of the blocks with the internal parks and squares. In terms of vegetation, originally only 2 or 3 sides of the block were supposed to be built up with a depth of 20 meters and a height of 16 meters. So between and inside the blocks, a recreational green space was provided. Although it can be seen that due to many reasons, not every block followed this rule. So to increase density and profitability, some blocks are 4-side built with buildings. So of course that when we plan, not everything goes according to the plan. So his idea in the beginning was to have, for example, here you have an open space, but what happened was that to increase profitability, density, so over time you can see that some blocks, they actually are 4-side built, which in practical changed his first idea. What was it supposed to be? Well, Cerdá, he wrote about urbanization, which is the first documentation of the formulation of the ideal city. So I recommend you to try to search more about it and read, because he makes an urban analysis of the city He discusses a lot of themes such as the capacity of buildings, circulation. When he was planning for Barcelona, he carried out a topographic study of the area. So he also discusses about vegetation, about green areas. He takes into account the region's climate. So these are different themes that he discusses in the theory of urbanization. In this way of thinking about urbanism, he's concerned with how to think about the city and what to think first, highlighting fundamental concepts such as homogeneity, spatial coherence, circulation, social interaction, emphasizing the concern with who will inhabit the city. When you think about Paris, the reform of Paris, you will see that the main issue and the ideas for the plan are completely different. I'm just asking you guys to study about both of them and to try to understand about each one of them. I'm not telling which one is the best or the worst. I'm just showing you the facts and asking you to think more, because Barcelona had a different background and a different demands, and Paris had another background, but still some problems were happening in whole Europe when you think about industrial revolution. This is something just for you to think. So just to summarize, what are the main facts of Cerdà's proposal for Barcelona? As one of the first authors of architecture and urbanism to claim the health of housing in a radical and effective way as the first condition to be met in the creation of the new city, considering housing as a fundamental support for quality of life. The dwellings planned by Cerdá had the following characteristics: the individual's privacy at home with decent living conditions, hygiene, sun, wind, air, natural light, which should be present in the dwellings, and the cost adaptation of the enterprise to the working class. This picture is to show you that these strategy here, when you analyze climate, when you try to understand the location, so you can see that because he specified the height of the buildings, you can see that he can provide shadow for whoever is walking down here. So these are details that are important, for example, for the people who are walking, for the people who are living and passing through that area. Okay, so let's now analyze Paris. This is a photo to depict the industrial city in the mid-19th century. Well, in light of contextualization, Paris was having the same problems as the other industrial cities, like garbage, problems of sewage, water, diseases, transport, problems of housing, and lack of spaces of leisure, for example. So the new class, the workers, they were clustering around the factories. They were living in filthy streets where sewage, bridge ran in the open, and mountains of garbage dominated the landscape. So epidemics proliferated, and inhuman working conditions in factories did not measure hours or respect age. So One fact that it's common in both interventions is the concern with hygiene. I think you guys could already understand that. However, the intervention of Haussmann, you will see that it was more a military intervention or a military intention. So I'm putting the both urban planners in parallel. Talking about France, he was attorney and mayor of the department, and he was commissioned by Napoleon III. He had a partnership, and he started in 1857, so both of the interventions were happening in parallel. So when you think about France, you will see that okay, there was the hygiene factor, but the reason was also to contain rebellions. France was living in a conflict period. And so when I talk about military reasons, was to improve the movement of troops through the streets and facilitate the circulation of the railway line. Think about better ventilation in the center and afforestation of lanes. So also vegetation, and eliminate alleys, disease. How was the Paris of the 19th century? It was an unhealthy city in 1853 when the emperor instructed Haussmann to rebuild the city with large boulevards and a sewage system. For this, entire regions should be demolished and requalified. The desire of Napoleon and Haussmann was to make Paris a new Rome. I put this photo here because this is it's still one of the most famous touristic spots in Paris. So I put this just to highlight the fact that just the political fact of this intervention. He built this after his victory in 1805, which remains one of the most famous symbols of France. So just to summarize in a few words, Haussmann refers to a policy of demolition carried out in Paris in the second half of the 19th century, which intended to intervene in urban space in order to control, discipline, and sanitize the city, as well as to create references and markers of space through monuments. That's why I put the photo of the arc. So the urban space is drawn according to an analysis of human functions, separately classify and locate the various forms of work as industrial, liberal, and agricultural. Logic and beauty must coincide. The progressive city refuses any artistic heritage from the past in order to submit itself exclusively to the laws of natural geometry. So it's like demolition because in the name of progress. Moving on. This is an interesting book. I put the reference here. It's Paris, Capital of Modernity. If you are able to see at least the images of this book, it is shocking to say the least. So I just put a few of them so you guys can have an idea of the contest. This is an important picture because it shows the plan of demolition of the old blocks. So in this part here, you can see the whole part that was erased. I decided to put a lot of pictures so you guys can compare, which I think is interesting, always to compare the photos to understand the before and after. Another fact that is interesting to pay attention is that all the facades, they were standard. So the buildings had the same facade. This is what I want to show you here, that they are basically the same as a standard. So when you propose demolition of areas of the city, don't forget the consequence, which is a lot of people, the displacement of population by the demolitions. So where do they go? Do you provide all the places, all the houses? So it actually increases the housing problem. Well, but in terms of technology, it improved the water distribution system and expanded the sewage network. One of the best water distribution system and sewage network. Pay attention that he planned to start with 12 wide avenues around the arc, where large mansions were built between 1860 and 1868. Haussmann brought symmetry to the city. He wanted all main roads to pass major buildings and monuments. The new streets were laid out in a grid running east to west, north to south, with diagonal connections radiating out and connecting the cities. Perhaps most importantly, the wide avenues would be hard to barricade and allow fast access for troops. As I showed, standardized facades and buildings with the architecture that represented progress at that time. This is another topic for another class, but the aesthetics was represented by this type of architecture, which was even in Brazil, it showed, if you had like this architecture during that time, it showed progress. So he standardized the facades. This is a 5-story pattern. So on the ground floor, it would be the person responsible for maintenance. Just remember that during that time there wasn't elevator, so workers and poor class would live in upper floors, where you have the most valued floors, the ground floor and the first floor. This is a summary of the measures that were taken. And these are more photos so you can see the wider avenues and the boulevards, and to call your attention of the monument. This is a great view of the arc. So what are the main facts of Haussmann's proposal for Paris? Redesign of the road network, opening of 165 kilometers of new lanes, and elimination of 50 kilometers of old lanes. Creation of a roundabout for greater distribution of lanes, and standardization of the facade to highlight historic buildings. Just as a final review of the two, in Barcelona, Cerdá designed the extension of the city with sanitary infrastructure, a road system, and the design of the blocks integrated to the urban space and internal squares. And in Paris, he designed and implemented the first regulatory plan for metropolis. This is just to review and to end our class. I hope you guys enjoyed. just leave any comments and you can send me a message always. Thank you for your time.